Okay guys, welcome to the OTT Red Spotlight podcast, live from IBC 2023. I'm really pleased to have you guys here with me today. Obviously we're on the Bedrock stand. This podcast is sponsored by Bedrock, but today we're going to be talking about unveiling the sports OTT revolution. And I don't think that I could have a much better panel with me for this conversation than you guys. So how's IBC 2023 going for you so far? We're half a day in.
Good. Amazing. So far, so good. I landed 2 days ago, so jet lag has passed. So that's really nice. And meetings all day long. So
That's what it's all about.
Yeah, exactly. Only friends there, so that's great.
That's good. Carlo?
Yeah, I think it's good. I met already randomly a lot of interesting people, and I made new connections. So I'm less of a planner. I'm more of a going fluid and meeting people. But it works.
Organic.
Carl is out of that and why.
This is Carlo.
Very at ease. It's brilliant. I got here a couple of days ago. Today is always a busy day. I made a schoolwear error after all these years of wearing new shoes. Which I'm going to make.
Come on.
But, I'm rooting to rest my feet for with you guys. No, it's going to be good. I really enjoyed it. So
Great. Well, it's going well.
Of the years.
Going well so far. We've had some fantastic podcasts and I'm really looking forward to getting into this one. Before I do, guys, I'd love to give you the opportunity to just introduce yourself, not to each other, because I think we're known entities, but to anyone that's viewing this. James, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. So James Walmsley. I currently work in B&B New Group. I run product technology and analytics for Todd, which obviously a bit of bias, the most exciting new venture that Bean's moved into. I suppose pretty much my whole professional career has been spent in OTT and broadcast, Sky, BT, Middle East, working in Southeast Dubai and around the Gulf. I've been there at Bean just a year now, working with some great partners, and it's quite exciting to get into it.
I'm sure we will. Alexis.
Well, hi everyone, nice to meet you. Alexis Gaï, so I'm SVP Sales and Marketing at Clink. I am recently based out of New York, but I lead all the sales activities for the company for the last 5.5 years. Time flies. And prior to that, I was working at the company that Carlo knows also really well, called Delta Trade. And prior to that, I was working on the client side, part of the Campbell Plus Group for one of their daughter companies, building an OTT system. So I've been doing that for 12 years, and I've been at IBC for almost the last 12 years, except the COVID years. So that's been a while.
IBC veteran.
I know.
That's just an IBC veteran.
So I'm Carlo De Marchis. I spent my career in sports tech media for the last 36 years, mostly at Delta Trend, and I'm now pursuing my portfolio career a bit on the Factory 63, which is my advisory business, and also my mini media company, which is a guy with a scarf, which at least as a brand seems to work because people stop me and say something and I don't know who they are. But that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
It's a great thing. Okay guys, so let's get into it. Sports. I think if the entire broadcasting solar system in terms of content was to have a satellite that seems to be generating the most gravity at the moment, sports would definitely be it for me. And I think particularly for you, James, that's regionally very appropriate because of the influence of the Middle East at the moment. So let's start off at a high level. What are the factors driving such rapid growth at the moment when it comes to OTT and sport?
Yeah, maybe I'll kick off because I think the sports on there can always be enjoyed by everyone, right? So I think it's, in terms of a scale and in technology and scale, this is something that has massive appeal.
Yeah.
It crosses cultures, languages. It's something that is live, which is obviously you've been disrupted. The bot side has come in and taken a huge chunk of everyday viewership, but live is still incredibly important. Your sport needs that charge. And I still think it's untapped. The amount of content and interaction you can build around it, I think is still quite nice. I mean, I don't think we've really even scratched the surface. So there's just a lot of potential, and obviously everyone's looking for the next big thing. I think it's something everyone should be focused on if they have further access to those rights.
Yeah, absolutely. Alexi, what's your thoughts? Why is it attracting so much attention?
I'll let's say double down on what James was saying about life. I think sports is definitely attractive because of that. Because there is always something unpredictable that's going to happen. There is a thrill. People who are watching it and following it, so are not called fans without a reason. They're passionate about their teams, about the flair, about the competition, about seeing what's going to happen next. And you never know what's going to happen next. So this is something you cannot guess, unlike some of the other type of medias that exist. So definitely sports is going to remain one of the things that are going to attract people together, families together, and people are going to have fun watching it.
So I think sport is at the center in some ways. Things like, this is the year where Apple brought MLS at the center of the stage, big tech going into sport in some way. With Messi going there, this became huge. Yeah. YouTube TV as NFL. Amazon TV in NFL will be a new one, so there's a lot happening even with big tech involved. On the other end, sport has to move outside of sport, because you see, and Todd, I think, will be a great example. Sport has always been looking at sport as the only side of content, but we learn, mostly because of Netflix first, that you can create so much more content and storytelling outside of sport, pure live sport, and that start to not merely competing, but Formula One, the US is taking attention to Formula One after a Drive to Survive. So there is a cross-pollinating of everything at the end is entertainment, and maybe sport itself has not found it. Someone else is telling them, look. And I think Todd is in a great position to leverage this moment.
Let's test that, because one of the things I'm interested in, there's the transformation of sport and the way that it's being consumed, and whether or not OTT is actually the springboard that facilitates that next chapter. If I think of my own kids and the way that they watch sport, it's totally different to the way that I would have consumed sport when I was younger.
Well, I think it's building on that. Kids is an important one, right? If we look at, I've got young kids, so they're a bit too young to be getting into this. But when we look at the generation coming through, not just about sport, how people consume content in general, right? Sport lends itself much better to that than video. We went through obviously TV series that were 20 minutes, and then there was long form series and movies and so on, and those have a place. But a huge amount of the content, 90% of the content on a day-to-day basis is clips, short things. You've seen the YouTube shorts and the Instagram stories. That you can't do with entertainment. It was very difficult to do with entertainment in a real way, but sport has that day in, day out. Thousands and thousands of connections a day across all different sports. So I think it's actually going to even get stronger as people with that habit already built move through. And those are the target over the next 10, 15 years, maybe even less, because it's only 5, 6 years old. Kids are already starting to consume it. So they can,
Alexis, you're obviously SVP for sales at Kling, and you're predominantly about retention. From a retention perspective, obviously viewers are very loyal to their team. Do you see the same sort of meaning for your proposition when it comes to OTT around sports volumes?
In a nutshell, yes, but in a very different way though. So sports is very different from any type of content in the more, let's say, traditional media space, because as we were coming back to it, it's something happening live, and there is a competition there. So today, there are so many different platforms that people would consume from. So if you name the big ones, like the Netflix, the Disneys, the Amazon Primes, and so on. So very easily, very fast. A lot of people are lost in those platforms without understanding what they're going to watch next, what is it that's available. So there is almost an overload of content in that sense. Sports is different, because when a game or a match or a fight is going to happen, if you're passionate about it, you're going to come to the platform and you're going to watch it. So you're going to find a way to watch it, whatever it takes. The issue that we see more and more in sports, and that's joining a bit what Carlo was speaking about before, is the seasonality aspect. And obviously a lot of companies are trying to bridge that gap by producing additional content. So is it documentaries? Is it interviews of players, interviews of fighters, trying to really feed more content to the fans? But that said, coming back to the technology standpoint, so on the one hand, of course, we need to understand where the churn source is coming from, but we also need to build the technologies that allow companies in that space that sell that content to be able to retain their subscribers. For example, one of the things that we worked a lot in the past years is creating this concept of recurring season passes, making sure that we productize a very complex thing to do when you're able to prepare your pricing strategy in advance and you're able to recapture those people who potentially went away during the off-season, which is an accepted thing by many of the players, but how do we recapture them automatically? How do we bring them back on the platform? So obviously for all of those mechanisms, it's absolutely crucial to be able to manage this flexibility in the offer level and so on and so forth.
Carlo, how do you think organisations in the sports arena are now considering how they differentiate and compete? Because if you look at teams themselves, they can get their own OTT channel, they can get a lot of the content, they can actually be more niche but more inch wide, mile deep on what they provide to their loyal followers. But if they can all do that, net, it becomes very mutual. What do you see when it comes to the opportunity for them to...
I suppose you're specifically talking about team sport teams or the sports in general? The sport in general. I think clearly you need to understand what is the media rights scenario for every case, because there is clearly a growing direct-to-consumer, if you want, attempt for many. On the other hand, the B2B aspect of it, so I sell media rights to someone, so I won't have media rights myself unless I carve out something. And that's defined what space you have. So at the moment, the B2B media rights is the dominant revenue thing for sport. I think you need to create differentiation on one end and extra revenue, maybe creating the IP that the fans and the audience are interested in it, and anybody can do it though. A team can do it, a mass can do it, and they do.
Yeah, no, I also don't think it's either or, and I think the business models of these are evolving. I mean, a lot of teams have been doing menu TV, and you've had these specific channels. With Fast, but you can still have the opportunity to build those quite niche products, but to get the reach and to get it involved in a platform, I think it's still going to be quite important. If you look at what happened, and we can kind of get a bit of a crystal ball at the VOD world, there was kind of a huge segmentation. Everyone sort of went away from the operator deals, launched B2C with varying degrees of success, B2C products, and different territories are very different. That seems to be doing a bit of a U-turn in some ways, especially in some territories, especially in territories close to my own. So I think the consumer habit is about ease of access, and then when you fragment too much, it becomes very difficult, and then people have to make too many choices and so on. I think it's actually better, rather than, or if I was in a position where I was owning a team, and I wouldn't be necessarily looking at trying to take away from that market. You'd be looking at the new strategies around the fast channels or dynamic ads, so you can still get access to that revenue and that customer base and control your brand, which is normally what these drives them to do, while still participating in a wider ecosystem.
It's interesting, James, because you've touched on a few points there that I think are particularly relevant when it comes to the complexion of this space. And you're talking about rights, access, all that sort of stuff. I'm really actually quite fascinated in rights and the amount of money that's been put on the table in order to get rights to, English Premier League, all of this kind of stuff. You've seen lots of the different things, Carlo, all around the world. Have you seen things change, or is it equally as competitive, just with more amounts of money on the table nowadays?
I think every time you see we have the open, and the deal is not happening in Italy for now, for example. So League One just launched 6 months after Serie A. So I think every time you have a rise cycle, we don't know. Will it go up? Will it cut down? There are so many competing factors. For example, in Italy, I think one of the factors, everybody expected big tech to come, and at the moment they're not. And it's still the national, Sky and Mediaset, etc., and so on, competing. So that didn't really move the needle up. In other places, like, we will see Premier League, etc. So I think in general, for sure, what you've seen already in the last year is the top rights are going up, and the middle tier or low tier are struggling, right? So they need to find alternatives. But I think in general, what is interesting in this period is some key long-term deals or different deals, like I was mentioning Apple and MLS. So there is a bit more creativity in the way deals are being struck. I think first, starting with Olympics, some broadcasters started to, it's every 4 years, but to create this long-term deal, 12 years, 16 years. And on the other end, who is part of the deal is different. And you can imagine from a sport point of view, talking to BBC or Sky is one thing. Talking to Amazon or Apple is a different thing.
Yeah.
And it's much closer. And that's why you need to build inside, as a sport entity, some B2C understanding, because then it's difficult to talk to Amazon, I think.
Yeah, it leads nicely into the next point actually around strategies and features that enhance user engagement. You know, that's one of the things that absolutely should be. I can think of a whole rainbow of things that actually start to affect this. That we wanting you. Maybe you can't comment too specifically.
I think a lot of what we've already done is obviously out there. We work with some great partners, Delta Tray. I mean, some of the bigger technology solutions providers out there who've been in this game for a long time. And so that's the start of your journey. And you've got the core stream. What do you build around it? Well, you engage it with the timelines, you engage it with the clips. So we talked about these different content boards. But now we're looking similar to what I've been saying about the kind of more social edge. So how does that span your friends? How are you sharing and receiving and polling and engaging during the game? And also, I think there's, maybe it's kind of a spin on what Alexis said. It's not just about engagement through the specific event you're watching. Getting customers to engage with your service, whether it's in season or out season, whether your team is knocked out of a need or not, it is another challenge. So you've got to build your product flexible enough that you've got the right proposition. When you talk about product fantastic features, it's all about the offer, the proposition at the right time, in the right currency, on the right payments end. These kind of things are equally as important to get people in and out as they see fit. Because if you can make that easier and remove those kind of frictions, people will be more inclined to come back. And you'll see people engaged naturally with your content. You know, we've got a lot more to count, but that's probably more. And
that's as much as you can disclose at the moment. Alexis, we've spoken about this before. You know, I've got a bit of a fascination with data when it comes to OTT and the fact that there's this huge resource of data, but data's only data. It's the intelligence that you derive from that allows you to do something innovative or commercially compelling with that. Do you think that that is being truly tapped as a resource yet when it comes to sports and the amount of data that's available and whether it's being exploited to the advantage of the organizations that host this content?
Yeah, it depends how far you want to go. So to some extent, and data is being tapped, but I will actually build a bridge between what James was saying and something slightly different from the question that I'll come back to it. It's really interesting. So we used to work with Carlo in the past, and there was one phrase we used back in the day when we were discussing with a client that any brand, especially in the sports environment, needs to build a fan's home away from home. So not every single fan is able to go to the stadium on an everyday basis or every week basis. And when you're building an OTT proposition, a .com proposition, a brand, etc., so you're literally trying to construct something that will attract the fan to come back. Bridging the gap with your question, I hope you remember this one, Carl. You know what I'm talking about. But so thinking about data, it's thanks to the data that you can understand your fans with your subscribers and your users there. It's thanks to the data that you're able to know how you're gonna present that home for that fan. It's thanks to the data that you can push the right recommendations. Thanks to the data that you can capture, let's say, that you can improve the authorization rates of the payments and obviously improve the frictionless experience of the subscriber coming back to the service. It's thanks to the data that you can recommend additional elements. There are a lot of talks that we hear about right now, sports, OTT brands, thinking of how can we combine the digital proposition with selling some physical goods. There are a lot of things that we can capture and we can do so. There is a literally unlimited potential of what we can do, and it's all a matter of how much time and resources we can put into it from an internal perspective of the company, and who do you leverage as vendors, and are those vendors capable to delivering your vision and driving the strategic vision. So
Thank you for the reference, Alexis. But one thing that always fascinated me in my last years when I was fully focusing on OTT with full access to all the data pool, revenues, subscribers and everything, and appreciating the beauty of a spot. So it's the complexity of a spot that the consumer wants, but the beauty of it. One, all product decisions are done to working well. The customer experience, the discovery experience, and the consumption experience are done with decision taken that considering that you have a paying customer in front of you. So on the one hand, there is a lot that there is, if you work well, a strong rationale to every decision, and there is a respect that you build for people that are paying what your team. It also motivates team in a very more profound way, because you think, oh, these people have spent whatever they spend every year, or even more. On the other hand, the fact that even if for marketing people, I think that the first part of the funnel are more natural, marketing steered, trying to get people to come, converting them, etc. But retention is the core, because in the end, you think you have all these people paying for me, you created a value proposition. The last thing you want is them leaving, because they're not felt. Obviously, you need to understand why they want to leave. If at some point they may just be distracted, something is happening on their part. So there are a lot of reasons, but I think it's empathy. And hence, I'm not trying to be too philosophical, but real empathy between you as someone that provides value to them, and the fact that they're paying back with attention and money. I think you always have to evaluate. For example, with data, having the perception of the total money people are spending depending on the content you're offering, it's a good measure. I dislike it because the moment you see it so concentrated data, not only you have to use them well, you also have to collect them well and join them well.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think retention is crucial, because in the end, that's what makes you successful in the end.
There's another element to sports, isn't there? That's always been massive at whatever era of broadcasting is the case. That's probably even before broadcasting as we know it, which is obviously advertising. It'll be interesting to hear what you guys think about the new dimensions or enhanced traditional dynamics that exist to generate revenue through OTT as a transmission mode for sports. But it'd be interesting to know what you think about that, Johnny.
So we talked a little bit about FAD. I think the dynamic advertising landscape is relatively well trodden. I think there's lots of opportunity to do that better. Especially in our region, which is so diverse, we need a more tailored strategy for our advertising, if I'm honest, which we as OTT will again come to the head. Working for beIN, which is an incredibly powerful broadcaster, doesn't have that same connected capabilities that we could bring, and so that's something we'll definitely never tackle. And I think there's we talked about a bit about the clipping, how people are consuming your short matches, your mini clips. There's huge amounts to build rappers around that. When you're publishing to Instagram or social media, we're not really exploiting that enough. And so I think getting that, getting those improvements through will be something we look at heavily. And equally, we have the likes of YouTube and even Facebook are looking at sort of more paid services where they're trying to encourage you to provide content to let them do it. I don't know if that's necessarily the way, but I think these are all things that can be considered. Alexis said, one final point about sort of retail, sort of e-commerce, I guess, built around sports is definitely one. It's equally as complicated, right? But I've seen solution providers around here are deciding to take on that challenge. I'm always nervous when you've got sort of Amazon Prime, they're just about getting into it when they own both one of the biggest platforms and the biggest retailers. You think they were the best prepared. So for someone who's only got one side of that equation, maybe harder, but over the next 10 years for sure we'll see a huge transition towards where people find it.
You mentioned social media there, it could be in YouTube, TikTok, etc. It's interesting, the question around viewer attention. Again, as I started off by saying, if I think of how I used to watch a football game with my friends when I was younger, you arrive for the pre-match, the whole match, and then the post-match analysis. It doesn't happen now, as far as I'm aware, in the demographic below, a certain age group. They'd rather watch it in short form, just the highlights, and they don't even watch it in landscape, they watch it in portrait. Things have definitely moved on, but does that create a challenge in order, in terms of the viewing time for some of these revenue channels that we're talking about, in terms of a limited window of time, to have the eyeballs of the viewers if you're going to generate money from advertising, for example?
I mean, so you don't know the exact metrics. My thoughts, yes, in one way. But equally, if you're thinking about a short form piece of content that's 30 seconds, I have a goal in your favour, but someone's going to watch that. you'll put a 5-second ad, they'll probably skip it, but you'll get that ad on every single 30-second tip, as opposed to 5 ads in a half-hour period or 90-minute period. So, it's different. It doesn't mean you can flood the world with adverts on every single tip and every single goal. We don't want to go down that path. But I think there's still plenty of opportunity for that to be a significant source of revenue. It can also be still tailored and so on. And in sports as well, which is quite unique, because it's very live, we have a lot of the ad replacement, so ads on pitches. You see the states of there. I mean, they're very well down that path, and replacing the banners dynamically by territory, by whatever. So I think in-stream advertising as well. I've seen solutions on board. We do some great original content, and it's something we've talked about. Can we change the shop front to this shop front? Can we change the advert that's in the background? And you can,
absolutely,
in almost real time, almost by territory and almost per user. So it's just going to be a different space. But I don't think there's going to be any less. I don't think it's just going to be a bigger pie.
I've actually seen that technology from Chris RT. It's phenomenal. It's cherished the button as it's set up. It's phenomenal.
I'm not an expert in advertising in general. What I'm only advocating is I would expect in this moment a bit more creativity about the way ads are served. Because if it's all interruption, I don't know, but I have the sense that, especially because of the sort of attention span, etc., are they still effective? The ads that I used to see as a kid in the linear television. Every time I see something new and become brave, like the NFL, keeping a bit the live stream when nothing is happening, but still you see the players. I think it's more effective because maybe I just go, I know it's 3 minutes, I just wait with the kids for 3 minutes and then come back if it's a big screen. So I think creativity about observing could be a way out of at all. How do we do it? How do we not? So one of, I think your implicit question, how do we not be soft-cut before the audience get too much?
Yeah.
I think the data point is key, right? Data gives you timeliness of data is important, but there's also the argument that you don't necessarily need to serve the ads in real time, right? With the right data structure in place. You can understand what someone wants to see, what they might be engage with in terms of advert, and you can know what time that's best served. Doesn't need to be necessarily during the live sport. So I think there are solutions that can stop the flood of adverts, which isn't going to be a compelling experience, but still generate the real estate around. Maybe it's in an email at the end of the week, maybe it's a notification later in the day when they're on the way home. These kind of things are going to be quite unique.
The one thing a bit and neutral to the different points and beyond the advertisement quality and so on. The one thing I think relevant to mention is the importance of finding any way to monetize a very expensive right that you have bought.
Yeah.
Ultimately, the reason why advertisement exists is to get money out of it. Let's be concrete. Then on the other hand, we can subscribe to a premium solution, have less ads, or no ads at all. What you see, especially from our side, in the last, I would say, couple, 3 years, the market is how do we optimize and how do we find those hybrid models when one company, one service can monetize in different ways. So some customers are better off watching a bunch of ads and in exchange of a free or a discounted service. Some have a little bit more flexibility on the thing, and they would rather have a premium experience without any ads. And so just different profiles. What we've been really investing time and effort on, especially coming back to the data piece, is understanding how do we maximize the ARPU of a given user. So on top of which, how do we maximize the ARPU and the lifetime? Because if I'm satisfied with the way that I'm consuming, if I'm going to stay longer with the platform, and obviously I'm going to bring more revenue to that platform. But on top of it, how do we make sure that we offer the flexibility to the right people to consume the way they want, while being able to still recoup the cost that's been invested in the production, the website, and or the rights, etc.
The bottom of it goes to so many topics that we could talk about around sports, but I want to ask you about the final question, and it's what we think the biggest risk is to this momentum that sports is building of the Saturn of the solar system in terms of broadcasting content. Is the biggest risk to live events and particularly sports ensuring a seamless streaming experience? Is that the single biggest risk, or can you see something else on the horizon that is more complicated, more technological, or is it simply the viewing experience and the risk of it being interrupted at a critical moment? And would you like to give it a go?
I think that should be your lowest card, right? I mean, there's plenty of excuses for things go wrong in technology, but I think having a consistent and high quality experience, and that includes latency and other metrics is pretty much your baseline. So I wouldn't sacrifice much else on that. I think though, in terms of the growth and the engagement that we'll generate, one of the biggest threats today for us in our region is piracy, something we tackle day in, day out. Piracy of a stream is unfortunately quite easy for the very smart people, unfortunately, that are pirating the content. But actually pirating the experience we can build is very, very difficult. And so I think the biggest risk over the next few years, because rights are incredibly expensive, is making sure we replace that with downside with enough engagement and loyalty from our existing and incoming customers to offset it. Because we're never going to get compete with the piracy. We'll always do our best. But I do think what they can't do is invest in the product and experience, the services around it, and making sure that they can access right off at the right time, the right way, making all that friction go away. It's got to be.
It's a great point.
I think more on the technology side, obviously the one thing that everyone should care about is making sure that the stream is live and accessible. I'll put in the CEOs because at Kling we've covered already in the last years the Men's World Cup, the Women's World Cup, we covered Super Bowl, we covered 2 NFL season launches, we covered all of the Grand Slams, all of those big events. And sometimes we see how much it is underestimating the complexity of having these uploads of users, of subscribers joining the platform just before the game, to your point earlier. People, those especially who are streaming, they're connecting just before. There is not so much of a pre-match. You cannot have the pre-match between your friends, but you are playing music, you can be doing something else, or maybe you have the commentaries in the background like an accessible channel. But once you want to watch the game, it's in the few minutes before the game that everyone walks in. So the importance of being ready, of having a scalable technology, a scalable stack of vendors, everyone coordinating in the very nicely way, that's absolutely crucial, because once you manage to somehow solve the piracy or hopefully mitigate that as much as you can, you need to make sure that at that particular time that your fans will get the content that's to you, because they don't have another way and they want to watch it live, coming back to that million. So,
Colin.
So I think the 3 risks I see a bit more in that are one, that the young generation don't care about sport, and not much we can do around this table, but that's significant. Second, that sports take complacent like this today, thinking that they have a gold model and they will last forever. Normally that's never a good idea. And third one, I think that between B2B and D2C, so media rights and going D2C with all the complexity of direct to consumer, more companies find a sustainable model. Because what we're seeing, we're seeing unbundling, then we're seeing bundling, and I mean, you say in Italian, in bocca al lupo, which means good luck, I think, to totally new venture, because it seems to be a platform in an area, everything is growing around that. So I think there is a lot of opportunity for them. But that's what I see as the 3 risk we have to work on to be successful.
And we didn't even talk about electrolyzed production environments. That could be a whole different topic.
Actually, there's one. I mean, you mentioned it, women's sports, and it's just worth touching as we come out of the Women's World Cup, because there's always the risk that you've got it kind of just ties into what Carlo said, that the base for sports is older and the new generation coming in on esports and other forms. But actually the rise of women's sports in the last couple of years, and I don't have official numbers I can share, but we saw huge, far more than we ever expected, and that would only increase. That's double the content for us, double the audience nearly. I mean, there's a women fan, but a huge new audience coming in, and a hugely younger audience. So the future is very bright in terms of the amount of content and the interest and the the available sort of eyeballs that are there. It's just getting the right product to person.
And if you just saw US Open, the Algo Golf final. So not only was the most seen event, watched event in the US for women's sport, but it was more than the Djokovic final.
Wow.
Okay, obviously, Flow Golf is American, but still, it's impressive, like 50% or I don't know, 30% more. So that's an impressive number. And sure that, you know, when you hear people say, nah, okay, why do WTA and women police is, I find it, it shows it's an amazing game and it has interest and you see.
Yeah. Guys, it's been a pleasure talking to you about OTT and scores on the OTT Red Spotlight podcast, sponsored by Bedrock today. Thank you for your time, Carlo, Alexis, James. I hope you enjoy the rest of IBC 2023.